You want your dinner on the table and a marriage that is equal. Well, meals don't come up through the tablecloth. Hannah Maria Webster, born 1872 at Alport Castle's farm in the Derbyshire Peak District. Alport Dale has an air of remote wilderness, enhanced by the tottering towers and eroded rock faces of Alport castles. Castles, as the debris from a landslip has produced grit-stone mounds which tower over the valley, looking from a distance like castles. A mile north of Snake Pass, which links Manchester and Sheffield and crosses the wildest part of the southern Pennines. 2 farms, hidden away in a cleft of the hills, approachable only on foot along a cart track. Hannah's family occupy the larger of the 2 farms, and beyond the small sheep farm lies open moor, thousands of acres inhabited by sheep and grouse. Peregrine falcons nest in the crags. Hannah's parents started the farm on borrowed money, meaning a constant struggle to repay. We join Hannah, now grown up and having left her difficult childhood behind her by leaving home aged 14. She's worked her way through sweated labour and moved lodgings wherever her work as a seamstress has taken her. No one can grow up on a farm and remain ignorant of the origin of life, and my mother had warned us in the plainest of language of the consequences of what she called running after lads. Several of our girlfriends had fallen victims to the primitive passions of the farm lads, who in many cases were scarcely more intelligent and not as decent as the animals they tended. I was now earning 15 shillings a week, paying 5 a week for bed and washing, and providing my own food. I managed to save a shilling or 2 each week. My hostess was a widow. She had her hands full with 2 children and several male boarders, so she was grateful for a little help on Sundays or in the evenings, and I was always sure of a good Sunday roast, and often found some little dainty ready for my supper. At my new lodgings I read The Clarion, the socialist weekly, and was deeply interested in the theories put forward, and sometimes hung around meetings in the public square. I found that one of the male boarders was a convinced and keen socialist who was always ready to talk or argue on the subject. He lent me a number of books dealing with inequalities in the social system. Perhaps, at first, I was more interested in the propagandist than the propaganda. Apparently the interest was mutual because we married 2 years later, in 1895. At the age of 23, I became Mrs. Hannah Mitchell. Hannah doesn't tell us her husband's name, and he remains a shadowy figure. But their marriage lasted for 51 years, and their home became a centre for political activity and discussion for over half a century. I was earning 18 shillings and my fiancé was earning 25, a combined income of 43 shillings. But getting married meant I had to give up work, which reduced our income to just 25 shillings. When I rose early on my wedding day, I found that every neighbour had risen earlier still, cleaned her windows and whitened the flags both back and front, giving the whole street a festive appearance. That memory is clearer than any other I retain from my wedding day, one kindly little action done so long ago, and probably forgotten now by the women who did it. I wore a simple grey frock and had 3 bridesmaids, a novelty for working class folk in those days. There were no speeches or toast drinking at the wedding breakfast. We all went for a walk in the local park, returning for an ample tea. And we left early to return to Bolton to work the next morning, the wedding having taken place on the weekly half-holiday. We rented a cottage for 5 shillings a week, leaving only 20 for food, coal, light and clothing, as well as the things we needed for the home: crockery, baking utensils, wash tubs. I managed by supreme effort to buy a mangle, but the baking mug and bathtub had to serve for washing clothes. I had a second-hand sewing machine, so I made the hearthrugs and window curtains. And I began to take in dressmaking to ease the financial strain. I found myself caught in a sort of domestic treadmill. Even my Sunday leisure was gone, and I soon found that a lot of socialist talk about freedom was only talk, and these young men expected Sunday dinners and huge teas. We really couldn't afford anything but the plainest of food. My husband insisted on homemade bread, which I could do really well, but I grudged the time spent over the hot oven. Perhaps, if I had really understood my own nature, as I came to do later, I should not have married. Married life, as men understand it, calls for a degree of self-abnegation which was impossible for me. I needed solitude, time for study, and the opportunity for a wider life. Home life was a constant round of wash days, cleaning days, cooking and serving meals. Just raise your hand if you were the person who planned, bought and cooked the meal that you enjoyed earlier today. Thank you. The tyranny of meals is the worst snag in the housewife's lot. Her life is bounded on the north by breakfast, south by dinner, east by tea and on the west by supper. And the most sympathetic man can never be made to understand that meals do not come up through the tablecloth. They have to be planned, bought and cooked. You want your dinner on the table and a marriage that is equal. Well, meals don't come up through the tablecloth. You think money is elastic, my purse made out of magic. I can feed a house of 4 on one man's wage. Did the girl who shared your summers vanish with this wedding ring to pick up where your mother left off? One thing's clear, there's no getting out of here. If I'd known then what I know now, we'd not be married. If I'd known then what I know now, if I'd known then what I know now, if I'd known then what I know now, we'd not be married. One thing's clear, there's no getting out of here. If I'd known then what I know now, we'd not be married. You want homemade bread, not a wife who's well read, who will pickle and preserve and make and mend. And with every cup of tea, she'll toast her liberty at escaping from the mill and factory. Did the Garden of Eden have a wash house? Who cooked before mankind discovered fire? One thing I know for sure, as a woman who is poor, there'd be more hours in the day if God was female. There'd be more hours in the day, there'd be more hours in the day, more hours in the day if God was female. One thing I know for sure, as a woman who is poor, there'd be more hours in the day if God was female. You want potted meat and pies, a marriage based on lies, a wife who'll take in sewing on the side. And when she's cleaned and baked her bread, before she settles down to bed, she'll pop out an heir to raise up in your image. And no sooner has she given birth, she'll just forget the pain. Why else would a woman do it all again? I offer this advice to the girl who'd be a wife. It's the cock that crows and the hen that lays the eggs. It's the cock that crows, it's the cock that crows, the cock that crows and the hen that lays the eggs. I offer this advice to the girl who'd be a wife. It's the cock that crows and the hen that lays the eggs.